I'm so glad that you're like fully plugged in and ready to go today.
Ready.
Is
So
Young?
we have two technical topics.
Do we?
Well, that's what's on deck right here. And I'm wondering if we should switch one to non-technical.
We do whatever makes you happy, man. The vibes.
So right now, the two ones are Scott, you teach Mark how to make his terminal colorful, and I teach you how to take a dump.
I'm
Oh, sorry, take a dump. Hey, don't laugh at non-native speakers.
It's not non-English speakers. You said it absolutely perfectly.
We would say
It's
the same thing.
always been funny. It's been funny for 30 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought it's just me.
Do you? No, it's not you. Do you know why it's funny?
I don't know, actually. Explain that to me.
So, you know what a process dump is, right?
Yeah, I know that.
Okay. So if you take a process dump, you take it from the process. But if you are living your life and then you're like, hey, I need to go take a dump, it means poop.
Oh, okay.
So this has been funny since the 90s. And this is something that is just one of those things that everybody giggles at when you say it.
Oh, okay.
All right, let's do this. Do I just 1, 2, 3? Okay.
What you there? Did we start?
We're starting now. Hey, friends. Welcome to Scott and Mark Learn To. Mark, I've been coding for some decades. You've been coding for some decades plus one. And I think that amongst application developers, average Joe and Jane application developers, dump files, DMP files, are still kind of opaque. I don't think there's a certain kind of level where it's like, and now you're driving stick shift, taking a dump, no pun intended, on Windows. There's a certain kind of person that just gets it. How can we get more developers to get that? And is that a useful skill to have?
It is if you're a programmer, it's an absolutely must-have skill to have. Especially if you're doing native code development, but even with C#, I think you've probably opened a lot of dump files.
Sure. Yeah, a lot.
Yeah.
But I think that this is still this is my opinion, and we'll see what people say in the comments, but I feel like it's a sub 10% of developers' skill, which is probably not enough.
I don't think it's enough. You're really handicapping yourself if you're not able to process a dump file to understand what went wrong when your app crashes.
Yeah. Do you think it's because of the rise of managed code that we've kind of obfuscated what's really happening and people are just making memory and garbage collectors taking care of it? And
but even with that, so you get an unhandled exception. Like looking at the stack with symbols and source code, it's like you're in the debugger anyway. In fact, it's just kind of a static view of your app in a debugger.
Okay.
So if you can run the debugger, then you can open a dump file.
One of your most popular blog series is The Case of the Unexpected Whatever, where you're just living your life and then a thing happens. And rather than just accepting it like a normal person, you immediately stop everything, you get nerd sniped, and then you solve it by usually doing some kind of low-level debugging. Maybe you could take a dump for us today, and we could do some of that debugging on the show. Now, this, of course, will be interesting for those who are listening rather than seeing this on YouTube. So if you're listening to this podcast, we'll try to do some audio description, but you'll probably get a better experience if you go and check it out on YouTube, because we're going to share Mark's screen for this.
So, Scott, you were talking about my Case of the Unexplained.
Yeah.
You didn't get the name right, which shows that you never really...
No, not really a fan. Not a fan.
Which is really disappointing because you missed out on some good times.
What did I say?
I don't know. You said you babbled something.
Yeah. Okay.
But one of the things that I'd always show is in Case of the Unexplained is I'd get into crash dumps and I'd focus on kernel dumps because in a decade or so ago, blue screens on Windows weren't that all all that uncommon. It's gotten a lot better now, and I very, very rarely encounter a blue screen or a green screen. Do you ever have any?
I have. Only time I get green screens is when I'm installing unsigned drivers for weird IoT stuff, for weird, Arduino things I probably shouldn't have installed a driver for. I had a green screen a couple of days ago installing an unsigned open source ButterFX, BRTFS file system driver, and it was my fault, and I removed it in it. So I would not call that that was an error between the chair and the keyboard.
Self-inflicted, yeah. All right. But in the course of normal usage of Windows, it's extremely rare these days. So,
well, even if, like in the old days, graphics drivers would be blue screening you left and right. And now it just flickers your screen and you get a little, hey, something happened, but we figured it out.
Yeah. I don't even see that anymore. It just flickers. Yeah. But one of the things that I would do was show collections of blue screens out in the wild. And I haven't updated this in a long time.
You have a folder of blue screens?
Yeah, and they're just awesome. There's waiting for baggage. It's never going to come. It's never going to come.
I was in Berlin, in the Berlin airport, when the entire airline industry blue screened that day.
Yeah, I guess it looked like this, pretty much.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You don't see that anymore very often.
Yeah. But lots of airport ones, I guess. Look, this is just airport.
That's before they added the friendly emoji that makes you feel better about it.
Furniture store. Courtesy phone.
USB. It's always USB. Yeah.
Customs. Airport. Wow.
I'm starting to feel like it's the airport's fault at this point.
Yeah. One of my favorites, though.
Nice.
There's a Mac one.
Oh, wow. I always like it when the airplane video thing on the chair in front of you reboots, and then you're like, what version of Linux is this chair running?
And it's like from 1997.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, here's I like this one.
That's nice.
But one of the things that I have on here is one of my favorites. It's the space shuttle. They have a blue screen on the space shuttle, and it's the recording of them talking to mission control. I've got a blue screen here. It's got white writing on it. And you hear the mission control people say, okay, why don't you just write down what you see and we'll take a look.
Goodness.
And so,
okay. So when this happens, though, I mean, a lot of us feel helpless, but as developers, we do not need to feel helpless when a blue screen that generates a dump happens.
No. You don't need to feel totally helpless, but you can get some idea about what went wrong. And here, I can show you a tool that I've got that can let you practice if you're interested in debugging blue screens. And it's called Not My Fault. So I've just searched for it, and here it is. I'll download it and then run it. Requires admin privileges. And the reason it requires admin privileges is it's actually installing a device driver. And that explains its name, because when you have a blue screen crash, it has to be something in kernel mode, a driver that is causing the crash, or the kernel itself. And so this GUI that we're looking at...
So just to be clear, you have loaded a signed kernel driver that does bad stuff.
Yep.
But it's okay because you did it as admin.
Yes. And you can crash, you can hang the system. You can also leak kernel memory.
Okay.
So this is all aimed at trying to help you. Now, I'm not going to, like I said, crash my system. But I've got a dump file from before. And the way we're going to look at the dump file is using a tool called WinDBG.
Windbag, the kids call it.
Yeah, affectionately called Windbag.
Mm-hmm. And this is the new one. This is actually really cool. It's got a whole bunch of new features. The one I've been using for 20 plus years is not as pretty as this one.
Yeah. The one that you get in the WDK or the SDK is the old one.
Yeah.
There was a new one that was included with the SDK and WDK called Windbag X. Mm-hmm. That's evolved into just Windbag in the Microsoft store.
Yeah, it's super good.
Yeah. So if we open this up, here we go. And then I can type Control-D, which is load dump file. And this is for loading kernel mode or user mode dumps. Mm-hmm. And these are some dumps from Not My Fault that I've collected.
Okay.
From those options that you saw. Here's a high Urquell high IRQL or high IRQL dump.
Yeah. Probably from loading your Sound Blaster card on the wrong interrupt.
Well, no, this is but this is from not my fault, not from anything else. So
I know. I just whenever I think IRQ, it's like, did you put your card on 7 or 5?
That's true because they're interrupt requests.
Exactly.
And IRQL, interrupt request level, there's certain rules about what kernel functions you can call at different IRQLs. If you call a kernel function at the wrong IRQL, you could get a blue screen, which is IRQL related.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the my fault driver is causing here. Now, you saw when I loaded it up, it loaded some symbols. It's using the Microsoft symbol server to download symbols for Windows itself.
Mm.
It doesn't have symbols for my fault, though, because that's my own driver.
Okay.
But even without the symbols, we can understand potentially what happened here. So if I click on this analyze -v, that is an automated, heuristically driven view of the dump that can try to pinpoint what happened. And one of the most reliable tools for figuring out what happened is just looking at the stack trace on the processor where the BSOD function was called. And if we look at the stack trace, you can see NT trap. So that's a fault. And then you can see the next frame up is the my fault driver. So into the my fault driver, we ended up crashing at that location.
So what are the hex values? There's 5 of them there, and then a T in parentheses to the left.
So this is the stack frame address. This is the return address at that stack frame, and here are parameters in the stack. The first 3 of them.
Those are the addresses to the parameters?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we'd have to know what the function that's being called.
Right. You have to know what the shape of the function is and to figure out to go and decode those.
Yeah. But here's the actual line that crashed. So it's the reference of this, indirect reference of that caused the crash.
And that is a disassembly. So that's an x64 disassembly. If I was on an ARM machine, would it be ARM assembly?
That's right. This is actually 32-bit. This is that old from an XP machine.
Oh, because you pulled out a 2005. I was wondering about the date on that, but I saw the EAX and I was like, okay, what would this be if it was 64-bit? So that's 32-bit.
You can see x86, Windows XP.
Yeah, there it is. Okay.
But then what you would do, like you can say that it's pointing at, this is a likely culprit. And
did it do like heuristics, or did you just go back a frame?
Yeah, heuristics.
Okay.
Here's the heuristics. Let's take a look at this frame. Oh, look, it's NT.
That's me. Okay.
That's Windows. It can't be Windows. Oh, here, look, something that's not Windows. Probably
that's very heuristic.
Yeah.
Stack frame -1.
Yeah. Yeah, and then you can see, information.
Mm-hmm.
Crash test driver. So you can see this is...
So you don't have the symbols, but if you did have the symbols for my fault, you would be able to see those parameters, what they were, and exactly what function.
It would be like debugging, live. Like
right. And that's a thing that I think people don't realize. A lot of folks that are, know that Windbag exists, but maybe haven't spent time with it, don't realize that they could load these dumps into a Visual Studio-like environment and see a moment in time where the dump is preserved in amber, like a mosquito in amber from Jurassic Park, and they're like looking at it at a moment. And then, of course, you could get into even more cool stuff like time travel debugging.
Yeah. And then there's user mode dumps.
More common.
And you debug those in your favorite debugger, like Visual Studio. Or you can use Windbag to debug those too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm going to show you a cool tool related to dumps.
Okay.
That can help you capture your app when it's in states that you want to go look at, like high CPU usage or high memory usage if it's got a leak. Or if it's spiking every now and then, you want to catch it when it's spiking to understand what's causing it to spike in CPU usage. Or it throws a certain exception. You want to capture a dump. And the tool we're going to use for that is called Procdump. It's also on sysinternals. So if you just go back to sysinternals.
How is Procdump different than me going into Task Manager, right-clicking on a process and saying create dump?
So that is, manually generating the dump on demand. But what Procdump does is lets you monitor the process to capture a dump at a specific point in time. I've got it installed here, and it comes with a slew of command line options.
It's almost like conditional breakpoints. It's like
that's
I
what
can
it
go
is.
and
Yeah. So here, like this -C lets you set a trigger, which is when the process that I point Procdump at gets to this CPU usage, then generate a dump. And you can specify how long it needs to be at that CPU usage. You can specify what type of dump you want it to collect. You can specify the format of the dump file, where the dump file goes, the number. You can specify collect a number of dump files. You can specify that you want when CPU usage drops below a certain level. It comes with when the process is hung. The joke used to be that I put this in specifically for Outlook.
Ouch.
And actually I did, because Outlook support team asked me to put it in for them.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
But this is much more deterministic than just trying to right-click and hit create dump whenever you feel like
That's right.
it. So really, right-clicking and creating a dump from Task Manager is really only good for stuff that's clearly visibly hung. But this is far, far easier and far cleaner way to do things.
So let's go generate a dump just to see this thing in action. So if I say -C and I say like 10, that means when CPU usage of the process exceeds 10% of the CPU of the system, then generate a dump. And I'm going to actually run a tool called CPU stress, which is also a sysinternals tool. This CPU stress tool is designed just to do things like consume CPU. And if I do procdump -T 10 CPU stress, by default, you can see that when the CPU threshold goes above 10% of the system for 10 seconds, then it's going to generate a dump. Here's the format of the dump name. Here's where it's going to go, into the tools directory. And what we're going to do now is create a bunch of threads in CPU stress, select them, activate them, raise their, and then you can see.
Oh, that's cool.
It's right at the threshold right now. So it's dropping below every now and then. So if I create another one and set it to activate, we'll probably stay above. Let me raise the activity level.
Your computer's too good to make this thing get stressed out?
Yeah.
Because you need it to be above there for 10 seconds.
Oh, look, we dropped below. Let me do another one.
Work harder.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's thinking and it's
7, 8,
above. Here
9,
we go.
and boom. There we go.
Dump initiated.
It sounds very high-tech, doesn't it?
It does.
And now we can go back to Windbag, and open that dump.
Now, you could also theoretically open this in just Visual Studio, right?
Yeah, it's good. Yep. Oops. And you can see here the thread, active thread here, stack. There's CPU stress all over.
I think people get intimidated by these. I know that this looks just like the Matrix to you, and you just look at it and you can immediately like identify stuff. Like you are fluent in this. But I think for a lot of application developers, they can follow Visual Studio's kind of visual debugger and spend some time in the stack looking at the stack. But I don't think I think that you, as a fluent debugger expert, maybe underestimate how few people spend time in this kind of place. But I think this is a good place to spend time.
Yeah, it is. It's like I said, you're handicapping yourself if you're not familiar with at least the basics of this.
Yeah. Now I saw that it just went to the symbol debugger, like the public CDN for symbols.
Yeah.
And brought symbols down, and those are going to be stored in your symbols cache.
Now this, You can see here, by the way, which Procdump inserted into the dump, the reason for the dump.
Interesting.
So
is that a Procdump? That seems like a uniquely Procdump thing. I think people would be spoiled to have that otherwise.
No, it's not. I mean, there's Procdump is calling Windows APIs to generate the dump, and that API supports inserting a comment into the dump. So Procdump inserts a comment about its trigger. And you can see here, it'll tell you the hottest thread. So if this is the thread that pushed you over the limit for the trigger, you can now go look at that thread in the debugger.
Actually, do this.
What?
Take the dump that you just had, the CPU stress one, and what does Visual Studio look like versus Windbag, and why would I use one over the other?
All right, let's see if we
and
can.
then we'll close out. Well, you need to minimize the Riverside. Okay, so what if I took that same dump file? That's
Wait. How do I?
You literally just open it.
Yeah. Open file.
Yep. Watching you type slow is kind of like doing screen sharing with my dad, helping him debug his problems with the computer.
You know what?
I'm like, isn't that in the clipboard? Can't you just Control V your way to glory? I'm like watching him type C:\\. It's good that you have been so successful in your career as such a slow typist.
I'm actually pretty fast.
All right, is this a playback in slow-mo? This is a nice screen. This is attractive.
MIDI dump file summary.
Look at that.
I don't see the comment though, which is lame.
That's interesting. That feels like a opportunity for us there. You're absolutely right.
Look,
it should be there.
can we
run diagnostic analysis too.
Tell me what happened.
I don't think Copilot's going to work on that one, dude. I don't think it sees mini dumps right now. Nah, it's not going to see that.
Yeah.
Try hitting run diagnostic analysis though there. Copilot for Windbag, though, I think people have been talking about it.
Managed debugging is not available for this mini.
Oh, because it's not a managed app.
Yeah.
It's not a managed app. Yeah, but you can go debug with native only.
Yeah. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Process was unresponsive and terminated.
Ask Copilot. That's cool. I didn't know it had. I forgot that they put that in there. Cool. This error happens because it became irresponsive and terminated by the operating system. In fact, not, because it was terminated by Procdump. But it couldn't know that. It just knows it got slapped by somebody, which was
Procdump injected this.
Yeah, exactly. So you injected the hang to shut it down.
Yeah.
That's cool.
All right, do you want to back up and do this again?
I think this is good as it is. I don't feel any.
With you making fun of me for typing slow?
Oh, that's hilarious. People love that stuff. That's going to meet more subscribers. Unless you're offended.
I am offended, but, whatever it takes to drive views.
Do me a favor. Go back over into the Visual Studio again and hit View Disassembly. I'm just wondering, why would I pick VS versus Windbag? Because I feel like there's things that are different. Oh. Yeah, right there. There's things that are different in here that are better, but I feel like I would probably end up using both of the tools.
Yeah.
And bounce between them.
I mean, it's whatever you're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm. You're just giving me nothing.
Continue. What?
You're just giving me nothing. Yeah, you can't continue because you're frozen in amber.
But look, it thinks you can.
Well, it's giving you the illusion that you're in the middle of an active debug session, which is kind of cool illusion.
Oh, look at this. Analyze.
Oh. A unique thread? Yeah. Which is true.
Look at that.
Yeah. This is really good.
Yeah. Here's the main thread.
And then hit show external code at the bottom. And the call stack.
Where's that?
Down. A little bit more.
What?
Show external code.
Oh.
It's a button. There you go.
So now you can see CPU stress.
Yep.
And jump.
Boom, there it is. All right, so then you said other than John Robbins' book, which is quite a bit older.
Well, there could be more recent books. It's just I haven't been paying attention to this space.
Yeah. Learn Windbag. Ooh, getting started with, look at that, Microsoft Learn. Getting started with Windbag in user mode. Open Notepad. Oh, they actually have you debugging it in Notepad. Like debugging Notepad, rather. So there's a whole tutorial over here to go and do that inside of Microsoft Learn. So you can go into getting started with Windows debugging. They have both user mode and kernel mode. They have a whole thing about choosing, 32-bit versus 64-bit tools. And they walk through an example where you actually stop Notepad, look inside of Notepad, and then run around and see what's going on. I didn't know that. What a great thing. That's up at Microsoft Learn, getting started with Windbag. Cool. Well, thank you so much for giving me that overview of Windbag. I got to go back and refamiliarize myself with the state of the art in both kernel and user debugging.
Have you ever used Windbag?
Oh, yeah. I was trying to play the foil so that you would feel smart and help me.
You never have you?
Dude, I have. Are you serious? Come on. I'm driving stick shift constantly.
When's the last time?
It was the USB driver. It was a Chinese no-name Arduino thing that I was trying to debug.
This was a week ago or whatever?
No, this was a couple months ago.
All right.
And I was trying to figure out what's going on. Oh, I almost used it with TikTok. TikTok Live Studio. I wrote a blog post about this a couple maybe a week and a half ago. It turns out that TikTok installs a device on a virtual camera. And I was trying to figure out if it was like their own driver file or not. It's called LSV Cam, but it's a user mode thing, not a kernel mode thing. But spent a little time in there and ended up just finding out what registry key they were using and deleted it. But so I was close. I was close to doing some debugging, but didn't need it.
Yeah.
I did use all the sysinternals tools though to save myself. So
you did? Nice.
I did. Well, my most favorite one is is it
Zoom it.
Well, I do love Zoom it, but I used to think about FileMon, Regmon, Procmon, but isn't there like a unified Supermon now?
Well, Procmon is FileMon and Regmon, yeah.
Yeah. I'm so old school that I would open individual mons.
Yeah.
Rather than the Supermon with this Procmon. But that's my most favorite thing in Windows is to be able to go and see what process is writing to the registry and why, and then do all the filters and get them to highlight and go, that's the one.
Yeah.
So that's the one that saved me in this instance, more than Windbag.
Yeah. There's a saying, when in doubt, run Procmon.
That is true. Yeah. And that's another, that I'll leave people with that reminder that there's nothing being hidden from you. There is always a feeling that the operating system is a big black box and I can't get in. But that is an illusion. That is a lie. If you want to know what's going on, go one level below your comfort zone. We've talked about this before. Mm-hmm. Everyone gets complacent. If you're a web dev, you get comfortable at ASP.NET and you forget that processes exist and ports get opened and all that. And then when you get to the user mode, you forget that the kernel is a thing. So I always try to go one level below my comfort zone just to get in the deep end of the pool, to mix metaphors.
Nice.
Cool. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your work over many years of taking dumps. We'll see you again next week.